Welcome back, YouTubers. Let's go ahead and continue on our study of systems of equations using our second solving method, substitution. Now, if you remember back from our introduction, we talked about how anytime that you have a system, you want to look at the style of the equations or the form of the equations and decide what method you need to use. Our top one, well, x's and y's on the same side, that's a standard form equation. Now this one, the bottom, if I look at it, I've got my x on one side and my y and the constant on the other side. That's not exactly slope-intercept. It's definitely not standard form. If you remember, this is what I call the sort of slope-intercept form, where the x and the y are in the wrong spots. Whether it's slope-intercept or the sort of slope-intercept, either way, you're still going to use substitution. Now, the only difference when you're solving a real slope-intercept is that the x's and y's go in a different order. It's the exact same process either way. So let's go ahead and practice that substitution method. Now, my students love their acronyms, so we went ahead and made this one. Silly men can't take dates so seriously. Now, I probably misspelled that. I'm a horrible speller. But here's what it stands for. The first S is substitute. Men stands for multiply. Can't stands for combine like terms. T stands for transpose. D stands for divide. S again stands for substitute. And our last S stands for solve. Now, I don't really like this being part of an acronym, but it's the best that we could do. All of the solving techniques that you learned previously in different units of Algebra 1 are going to come into play there. And I'll point that out as we get there. But let's go ahead and plug in and see what we can do here. Now, our first step says substitute. Now, we got to understand what the equal mark means here. An equal mark means that the thing on the left and the thing on the right exactly equal each other. So instead of writing an x, I could replace it with a negative 2y minus 1. You've done this at a few other times in your different math classes. For example, you may have done something like this, where you said 2x plus 3y, and they told you that x equals 4 and y equals negative 2. Well, you went ahead and you replaced that 2x and 3y, you said x was 4 plus 3 times negative 2. You replaced instead of x, you wrote 4, you just replaced it. And instead of y, you wrote negative 2, y, negative 2. You then would have simplified and done order of operations and all that jazz to simplify everything. The important thing to notice there is that whenever you replace them, well, the important thing is making sure there's parentheses around it, because that'll preserve any sort of multiplication and make sure the order of operations still holds true whenever you're doing your problem. So, back up here, what I'm going to do is take my standard form equation and write the entire thing down, but instead of x, I'm going to write the other half of the equation. So instead of x, I'm going to put it in parentheses and write negative 2y minus 1. So instead of x, I wrote this. The rest of the equation, the minus 4y, gets transferred down, and the 20 gets transferred down as well. So you can see the 4 is still here. The minus 4y is still here. The equal gets transferred down. The 20 is still there. The only difference is that instead of this x, I wrote negative 2y minus 1. There's my substitution step. Now for multiply. Now that multiply could be a simple multiplication or it could be a distribution, like this case. 4 times negative 2y is negative 8y. 4 times negative 1 is minus 4. And everything else just drops. Negative 4y equals 20. Multiplication step is now complete. Now combine like terms. Well, I've got these y's. Negative 8y, negative 4y is negative 12y. Minus 4 equals 20. Now, combining like terms is finished. Transpose. Let's go ahead and transpose that that number over. Negative 12y is equal to 20. Now, when we transpose, remember it means it moves to the other side of the equation, of the equal mark, and it changes signs. So it becomes 20 plus 4. The transposing is done. Now, before we get to this step, let's go ahead and clean that up. Negative 12y is equal to 24. Now D, divide. Divide both sides by the number in front of y. Gives me y is equal to, well, positive and negative make a negative. 24 divided by 12 gives me 2. All right, now I've gotten to my negative, or my first half of the answer. Now, luckily, I am almost done with this entire problem. It's half of the answer, but it's much more than half the work, so you're almost all the way there. We did our division step. Now, notice we only have 2 steps left. I'm going to take the equation I used to substitute, the slope-intercept or the sort of slope-intercept, and I'm going to substitute this y back in over here. Now, let me write it down so you can see it. X equals negative 2y minus 1. Instead of y, I'm going to write negative 2. Substitute again. Here's negative 2. Instead of y, I write negative 2. This one came in there. Minus 1. Now solve, or in some cases it can mean simplify. In various times this can be a different type of thing. It's going to be x equals 4 minus 1. So x equals 3. Now if you remember on our graphing problem, all of our answers are written as coordinate pairs, and we're going to keep up the exact same format. So our answer is written as an xy pair with 3 and negative 2.